I recently started humming an old internet goldie in the back of my head that I hadn't heard for many years, and out of curiosity I decided to revisit it. And that song was the always classic Chocolate Rain. What's fascinating about Chocolate Rain is that the lyrics are actually very deep and intense, and that's something you don't really come to expect from an old internet meme song. The song is about one clear topic: the existence of systemic racism in the United States and how it constantly exists around us, yet no one is willing to admit that it's there.
Chocolate rain. Some stay dry and others feel the pain. Chocolate rain. A baby born will die before the sin. Chocolate rain. The school books say it can't be here again. Chocolate rain.
Chocolate rain is something that devastates many people, but is ignored by those who don't seem to be affected. People who prefer to build a tent and say the world is dry. I think one of the most shockingly direct parts of the song is where the speaker literally states,
The bell cow blames the baby's DNA. Chocolate rain. But test scores are how much the parents make. Chocolate rain.
and it's just fascinating to me that this became one of the most famous songs on the entire internet, and entirely because people liked the loopy tone and thought that this guy's voice was funny. But it's also this deep and incredibly insightful piece of poetry that has so much to say outside of just being a meme. Anyways, once that song was done playing, Spotify decided to play me this.
Chicken
Nugget, biscuit, nugget in a biscuit, nugget, biscuit, nugget in a biscuit, nugget, biscuit, nugget in a biscuit, dip it all in mashed potato.
This simplistic tune immediately uncovered long-buried memories of a man who was once worshipped by me and so many of my friends. Someone who didn't just have one YouTube series that was good or one YouTube channel that was watched, but almost an entire overgrown YouTube empire of content. What happened to this mysterious traveler who went from YouTube god to unknown in mere moments? The answer? I don't really care. But it does seem like something that someone should make a video about. Not me. No, seriously though, seriously? Not... Okay, let's do this. So whenever I end up doing a video like this where I'm not quite sure what I'm going to say, one thing that does really help me sort through the mess are fan-curated archives of specific topics. A good rule of thumb is that if the topic you're researching was popular enough 5 years ago, it has a wiki. There's a Club Penguin wiki, there's an anime bath scenes wiki, there's a Chick-fil-A wiki for all your Chick-fil-A lore. But of course today, we're going to be talking about the Wikitubia page on Tobuscus. The thing about wiki pages that people don't understand is that they take a lot of dedication to work on, so if you're writing a wiki page, you really care about that topic one way or the other. So if you're a famous person with a wiki page, that page is only going to be updated, really, when a certain person or a certain group of people really care about you. For instance, last time I checked my Wikitubia page, I'm pretty sure it was mostly some guy documenting every time that I had ever criticized Ben Shapiro. And I like to think he still keeps that updated. Like, just every time I make fun of Ben Shapiro on Twitter, he types a little new subsection. If that isn't the case, I would very much like you guys to make that the case. Hey internet, Ben Shapiro's short and he's a dumb bitch. Go add that to my wiki. Anyways, the reason I'm saying all this is that I really fell in love with Tobuscus's wiki page because it reads like it was written in 2012, and then just it was lightly updated as years went by. Toby's main channel, Tobuscus, is currently one of the top 500 most subscribed channels on YouTube. That's not true. Most of Toby's viewers are young, between ages of 12 to 20. but he is still enjoyed by other age groups. Most people in his vlogs, which are often recorded in public spaces, are often confused as they just see a man talking and recording himself. Occasionally in his vlogs, he runs into some fans who are usually in shock to see him and meet him. Most famous Toby Games quotes. "What the hell? I'm dead. Suck it. Oh my god. God dang it. Holy mother of. What a bunch of balls. Who's yo daddy? Son of a biscuit. Don't make it awkward. This is the time. Booyah." These are really starting to sound like just things Sonic the Hedgehog would say, just whenever you're running around as him. Okay, and here's the only one I remember. "Bless your face. If you sneeze during this video, bless you." I remembered that quote, but honest to God, I thought it was something Philip DeFranco used to say. Toby's popularity can be attributed to his constant ability to be funny and his amazing skill at improv comedy. He is also a talented musician. Although Toby is 31 years old, he is still young at heart, which is why he attracts a younger audience. He frequently sings in his videos, though this is still unconfirmed. What does that mean? So when you look at Toby Turner's existence online, it starts off ridiculous and kind of cringy in a 2010 way, but then it gets really dark and upsetting and kind of hard to deal with. So the start of this video is kind of lighthearted. I make a lot of jests at this fellow who I'm not fond of, but then at the end, things get dark, and I just want to give everyone a warning that that's going to happen. So I ended up deciding not to invoke a sponsor on this one because of how the ending of this video is, but I thought it would be fine if at the start of the video I sort of briefly plugged my Patreon. I really want to get to a point in my career where I don't have to worry about how well a video does or how well a sponsor does, where I can just sort of wake up one morning and go like, this month I want to do a 7-part political video essay on the Love Bug movies, and I can do that because I already have all of my financial backing behind me. And Patreon is really the best way to go about having that. This has turned out to be a much more rough month financially than I expected it to be, and not just because it's the holiday season. My roommate moved out more quickly than he was supposed to. In fact, the way I found out that he had moved out is one day I noticed all his furniture and role-playing books were gone, and that's how I pieced together that we no longer live together. So the very little that he had been putting into the household budget every single month, I'm now covering myself. On top of that, I'm currently moving to another apartment, which costs the same, but is much better. But I got moving fees, I got pet fees, I gotta get some new furniture. Also, my editing computer just kind of croaked, so I need to either get it replaced or repaired, essentially this month so I can file it. Also, my bed frame, it broke, and so I need to get a new one of those. And I've kind of just been sleeping with my bed on the floor, which is really uncomfortable. Basically, any way that you guys can support me in any small way, or even just by watching my videos, really helps me out this month, and I can't thank you guys enough. And now that that's over with, let's meet Tobuscus. Toby Turner first started posting to YouTube in early 2006. These periodic uploads would feature skits Toby had created with friends alongside random videos of him playing music. One of the first original songs he ever uploaded was titled Re Your Brains, and was a parody of the Jonathan Quinton song about an office worker turned zombie.
And I plan on eating you slowly. All we want to do is eat your brains. We're not unreasonable. I mean, no one's gonna eat your eyes.
Toby brilliantly rewrote the song to instead be from the perspective of the person the zombie is talking to.
Bob, I know your sex appeal has never been that grand, but I can tell that things have worsened since the marching band. 'Cause I can see right through that shotgun blast-sized hole in you. All you wanna do is eat my brains, which is understandable. They are a little oversized.
I'll do classical gas.
One bizarre thing I discovered while looking through these early unseen videos was a series Toby created called Candy Planet, which revolves around a world where all of the people are candy and they go on adventures or something.
Well, so, hello, ladies. We're twins, but we're drunk. So we're lesbians. Could that mayhaps interest you in some coitus? Theo.
I think he envisioned this as his channel's flagship series because he made more than one, and they introduce plot threads that are never concluded and he never does anything with. I don't think he had any jokes prepared for this other than the fact that the main character is a chocolate bear and he's been adopted by 2 male gummy bears. So the only joke he really does is doing stereotypical gay voices for the dads and a black voice for the chocolate bear.
Man, I don't need no goddamn school shit. Son, you're black. I think what your other dad is trying to say is, you're adopted.
He also started a series known as Russians Review, where he and an associate would play 2 Russian characters who would review popular movies.
I give her body 2 eyebrow up.
How? You only have one.
You do.
2 videos specifically ended up pointing to a more clear direction on the channel. The first was called Googling Boobies, and is one of the earliest videos on the channel to have ever broken 1 million views.
It's far too late to minimize. I already know you are Googling boobies. I have come for your soul.
Satan?
I'm pressing my hot man banana up against your door.
Dad?
This is absolutely classic YouTube clickbait. You don't see a lot of great videos like this getting popular anymore these days. Hint to the person scrolling by that they might get to see a pair of bare breasts if they click on the video for a moment, and then show an annoying skit with some guy where he makes a bunch of jokes about penises. Then there was Toby's first big music hit, I Threw It on the Ground.
I threw it on the ground. Do I look like I have a job? No, I ain't going to no lost marathon.
I know what you're thinking. Wasn't that an SNL thing? Yeah, it was. But also he did it. This was back when responding to a comment made a completely new comment. So if you scroll down, you'll be graced with the sight of dozens of detached comments from Toby all in a row, cut out of context from conversations that he must have been having at the time, left bouncing into nothingness like a lost echo in a one-sided conversation. After this, he continued his music parodies, throwing a few viral remixes into the mix, and eventually creating the concept of dubbing over a trailer with lyrics literally describing what was being shown.
Flowers fade to a sunset, frayed to some hobbits. Dakota's now legal in 31 states.
This would soon prove to be one of his most impactful projects. Literal trailers aren't really as clever as I thought they were at the time. It's basically him mimicking the already in existence trend of making literal videos, where people would dub over surreal music videos of the 1980s so that the song was specifically made to match the visuals.
This guy's gonna get an ass full of pipe wrench.
Oh, watch out, then they're gonna beat you up with the pipe wrench, climb through this hole.
Literal trailers were sort of the same thing, except nothing about these trailers are nearly as visually bizarre as the music videos which were usually covered. So he usually is just describing very mundane things that aren't immediately funny. His trailer for Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is one of his most popular videos, and is also how I remember originally coming across him for the first time. Toby then went on to create Cute When Fail, a show where he would show and comment on viral clips from the internet. It was like Equals 3, but less funny. Cute When Fail and literal trailers are perhaps 2 of the greatest examples I've ever talked about on this channel of creations that have lost any and all value as time has gone by. They're both based around the internet's current cultural investment. So if you haven't recently seen a trailer for a Twilight movie or a viral clip from 2010, these 2 shows will have absolutely nothing to give you. Toby doesn't really add any charm to the experience. There's nothing clever about these. It's just a lot of him piggybacking off of pre-existing material. But it was in 2011 that Tobuscus started what I believe to be his most inexplicably worthless series. It's called Hot Symphony. This is what constituted as comedy in 2011. Around this time, Toby also seriously started to expand his horizons outside of his regular skit and music content, also creating regular vlog and Let's Play channels. Toby was one of the first YouTubers to both start a Let's Play channel and have their Let's Play channel become just as popular as their regular content. Toby was heavily influential in his introduction of Happy Wheels playthroughs, and he was also arguably one of the first people to fully buy into the craze of both Minecraft Let's Plays and Minecraft tie-in comedy videos. God, I have absorbed so much of this man's content, but at the end of the day, I can't justify why I've done it, so I just have to presume that everything I'm saying right now isn't super boring.
Okay, time for me to just flip up on the sip soup. I'm gonna sip some soup while I'm flipping the floop. Oh, good. Get the goop off my suit. Ah! I love tables. Yeah, man. This is a bobsled, man. I'm sledding the bob. Oh, I broke my sled. Now what is Bob going to do?
2011 was a damn good year for Tobuscus. First of all, it was then that the Tobuscus Animated Adventures first premiered, brought to life by a fan by the name of Gonzosum. The series proves to be really charming and funny, at least partially because there's a greater balance to Toby's energy. The animation's timing is really on point, and Gabe Uskus's straight man persona really gives the show that comedic flair that most of his other videos lacked. The animated Tobuscus spinoff was clearly introduced as a one-off fun video showing this unique concept, but it became such a hit that it was easy to fund more episodes, many of which today sit at over 10 million views. It also quickly evolved into just being poorly disguised ads for things Toby had been hired to advertise, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Because 2011 was also when we first saw Tobuscus shed his skin and become a music YouTuber.
Swing my sword, whenever I get bored. I can swing my sword, I can swing my sword.
I have this memory in the back of my mind, which I might have facilitated over the years, but I believe must be real in some way. Me and my childhood friend, the only person I've really known my whole life, we were hanging out outside of school one day, and we had these school-issued iPads, and so we both started playing Minecraft on these. Now this was the app version, and neither of us had paid for the full package, so we couldn't save, and as far as I remember, we couldn't play in the same world, so we were both independently creating our own little civilizations right next to each other in this free version of the Minecraft game. And at some point, I think he turned to me and he said, "Hey, have you heard Nugget and a Biscuit?" And I went, "Yes, but I'd like to hear it again."
Nugget, biscuit, nugget and a biscuit, nugget, biscuit, nugget and a biscuit. Dip it all in mashed potato, nugget, biscuit, nugget and a biscuit, nugget, biscuit, nugget and a biscuit, nugget, biscuit, nugget and a biscuit. Dip it all in mashed potato.
And so he went to the YouTube app, which came pre-installed on all iOS devices, and he pulled up a playlist of Toby Turner's greatest hits, and he continued to play that in the background of his Minecraft game, because back in the day, before YouTube tried to monetize YouTube Red, you could do that for free. And so the two of us sat there, being the best of friends in the golden years of our lives, listening to this garbage. Saying that Nugget and a Biscuit exists is already saying one sentence too many about Nugget and a Biscuit. But at this point, I kind of have to stop and linger on it, because Nugget and a Biscuit is essentially Toby Turner's main modern legacy on the internet. Not only is it true that the last time I thought about Tobuscus, I was thinking about Nugget and a Biscuit, it's true that the last 10 times, the last 15 times, the last 20 times I thought about Tobuscus, I was thinking about Nugget and a Biscuit. And so I have to extend this segment out to be relatively proportional to its importance in his legacy today, but I have to do it in a way that doesn't really say anything inherently important.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Cooking with Quinton. Today we're going to be making the Nugget in a Biscuit from Nugget in a Biscuit. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start by prepping the mashed potatoes. Take 3 raw potatoes and peel them like I have here, then cut them into cubes. Next we're going to take a large pot and fill it with water and a touch of kosher salt. The fact that it's kosher is important enough to mention every single time I use any salt in any recipe. Once the water's going, we're gonna add in our potato cubes and let it boil for about 15 minutes. Next we're going to put 1 cup of milk and 2 tablespoons of butter into a saucepan. Once the butter is melted, we can add in our recently drained potatoes and start mushing them into the mix, slowly stirring until it all starts to condense. And voila, you've got yourself some mashed potatoes. Next you're going to work on the nugget and the biscuit. Now personally I studied the nugget and a biscuit video frame by frame for 72 hours straight, and I came to the conclusion that these frozen pre-made biscuits were a good option for the first half. But the nugget was a little harder to figure out because the nugget in the video is as big as the biscuit. I ended up placing several nuggets on 1 biscuit. I know this is controversial, but I felt it would be the best compromise in the situation. Lay your nuggets across the baking sheet, put the package away, and then get it back out to read the instructions. Then place them in your oven at 400 degrees for about 11 to 13 minutes. When your food is ready, pick your oven mitt off the floor and quickly dust it off before you set your food to the side. At this stage, you take your nuggets, and you put them in a biscuit. Then you dip the whole thing in mashed potatoes. Well, the song says you dip them, but in the video it looks like the potatoes have been poured over. So I'm actually going to sort of spoon a little mashed potato onto the side here, with a little piece of butter for decoration. And of course, you can't forget to take your mashed potato covered chicken nugget biscuit and dip it in the barbecue sauce. Or pour the barbecue sauce. Once that's done, you're ready to eat.
This is so bad.
It's pretty good, but let's see if we can improve on this recipe. Take some fresh cilantro out of your fridge and begin beating it with a large hammer. This isn't actually part of the recipe. I just really hate cilantro. So let's start out by making some biscuits from scratch. Take a large bowl you bought on clearance after Halloween, and whisk together 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons baking powder, 1 tablespoon sugar, and 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. Then use a box grater to shred a stick of butter over the bowl, making sure of course that the butter is thoroughly cold and stiff beforehand. Quickly toss this together with your hands, and then struggle pathetically to unlock your phone without direct access to your fingertips. Make a small indent in the center of your dough and pour 1 cup of very cold buttermilk into the mix. Once it's barely starting to come together, place it onto a parchment paper covered area and form into a 1-inch thick rectangle. Fold twice, like you would a piece of paper you're putting into an envelope, then roll back into the original size. Repeat this process twice. Now this recipe is much more time consuming and expensive than the one we did before, but the good news is that the output will literally be exactly the same. Once your dough has been rolled and pressed 3 times, you're ready to begin cutting out your biscuits. While most recipes advise for a biscuit about 2 inches across, I actually am going to be trying to make the biscuits as small as possible. My thought process is that instead of trying to make the nugget bigger to match the biscuit, it would be much easier to just make the biscuit smaller. Now that your apartment smells like rotten milk and you look like a really snobby Coke dealer, let's go ahead and get started on our nuggets. This time around, I decided to make the small change of using these vegan nuggets. back when I was trying to be a vegetarian, I would always buy these, and they're pretty much the best home-cooked nuggets I've ever had. After around 22 minutes, your biscuit should be ready to pull. So we have our nugget in a biscuit, but instead of dipping it in mashed potatoes and barbecue sauce, I thought it would be better to instead put a little caviar on the top. Just a little. Yeah. There we go, that's good. And yeah, it's pretty good now. What do you know? One of the big things that makes Toby Turner noteworthy is that as a YouTuber, he actually managed to get a lot of gigs outside of the website. You see, around this time, internet sensations were a new and exciting thing, and networks wanted to experiment with bringing them on board to mainstream projects to market to younger generations. And Toby Turner seemed to be one of the most fresh, most popular, and most safe brands to invest in. And so, he was invited to take part in a lot of these concepts. He was in The Annoying Orange Show, a program that ran on Cartoon Network despite not being a cartoon. I always presumed the show was some sort of bad sitcom when I heard about it, but I watched a couple episodes, and it's just Annoying Orange YouTube episodes, but with a higher budget. Toby would play a character called Nerval, a worker at a fruit store who can see and interact with the fruit, and I don't have anything else to say about it. He was in an episode of Law & Order SVU where the writers were trying to write about Gamergate, but they invited, like, Logan Paul on for some reason. Like they were like, we're gonna write about Gamergate, get Logan Paul and Tobuscus into this show.
Alright, you need to think really carefully about what you're doing right now. Don't talk, officer!
He had a role in the film Smiley, which looks like a movie that exists. He was hired to make a series of linking segments for Cartoon Network with his dog that would transition from one show to the next. Also, he got to make a Terminator movie that they let him put Arnold Schwarzenegger in to advertise for Terminator Genesis, and he played one of the Terminators. If this movie isn't fully and concretely documented on the Terminator Wiki, I'm gonna be pissed. Oh, did you guys know that the Annoying Orange did a Harlem Shake video? You do now. Oh, look, in the middle, there's Toby! That's the excuse I'm using to torture you with this. He voiced Ant-Man in a Marvel phone game, which has no cultural importance other than the fact that he was in it, and then he wasn't, which is an incredibly low bar of relevance. And of course, he recorded a series of Hot Pocket commercials, which were really the last time I ever heard about him.
Just take it out of the box in about 2 minutes. Well, bam, slam, jam, done! Those Hot Pockets sure are pretty hot. Blow on it, Wanda! Blowing on your Hot Pocket! You're welcome!
Although I do know that he had made some sort of mobile game since then that doesn't look good. The point you can gather from all this is that Toby was everywhere, and that his mainstream influence was still growing even when his channel views started to falter in years after this. But all of this would change in 2017, during an event that would shock the internet and cause controversy for years to come.
So the inspiration for me wanting to make this video is legitimately the story that I told in the start of the video. I was listening to music on Spotify and Nugget in a Biscuit came up without me asking it to. And, you know, it brought back all these memories and I just started thinking about like how much of a horrible person Tobuscus is. And I just suddenly wanted to do a video making fun of him. But I also realized while working on it that making all of it this, you know, lighthearted romp at his expense and not stopping and getting a little serious at the end would be really heavily irresponsible for me to do as a creator. Okay, so a big content warning at this point because I'm going to be talking about abuse, I'm going to be talking about drug abuse, I'm going to be talking about sexual abuse, just a lot of heavy stuff that will probably not mirror the more lighthearted jests I've been making up to this point in the video. I know it's going to be a big tonal shift, but I again cannot emphasize enough how irresponsible it would be not to talk about this stuff. So Toby eventually ended up getting himself a toy because there was a line called Tube Heroes that essentially was attempting to make toys out of famous YouTube Let's Players. And one day, a woman who used to appear in his videos made a claim on Twitter that she was shocked to discover that a toy based on one of her abusive exes was being sold to children. People asked her to come forward and say who the ex was, but at first she hesitated, fearing the almost certain negative consequences. But eventually she did come forward and created a post on Tumblr telling the full story from her perspective. According to her, she and Toby had dated many years ago, but that the general public didn't know about it because he asked her to keep it from his audience. Toby, she explained, was addicted to hard drugs, had cheated extensively through their relationship, and at one point drugged her drink without her consent before flippantly admitting to it. Most shockingly, the woman claimed that one night in early 2013, Toby had sexually assaulted her. Following this, many of Toby's exes and friends started to come forward. At least one indicated that Toby had also drugged her, and overwhelmingly they all seemed to agree that Toby had a massive drug problem and consistently failed to be monogamous. And several stories came out of Toby being extremely inappropriate in social situations. For instance, in the smallest of the 3 stories, Toby had groped a female personality at a party and had then mocked her over private messaging for caring about the fact that he had done this. An editor-in-chief for New Media Rockstars told a story where Toby had arrived at a party and had forcefully kissed a woman he did not know, and that when the person had told Toby he needed to either apologize or leave, he refused to do either. And when the person noticed that none of the other guys at the party seemed to care that Toby had done this, he was given a response of something like, "Hey, that's Toby." Philip DeFranco ended up telling the most upsetting story, if sort of indirectly. He reported on an incident where he vaguely said that Toby had arrived at a Super Bowl party that Phil was running, and he had done something extraordinarily inappropriate in front of female guests, and because of that he had been kicked out. Well, it turned out he had told this story before, he just hadn't said who the story was about, but he had included all the details, so we have the full story. And the full story is that Toby Turner, the famous YouTuber Tobuscus, had gone to Philip DeFranco's Super Bowl party and had taken his penis out in front of female guests. Apparently he was flirting with one of the guests and he wasn't getting the reaction he wanted. So as a last-ditch attempt to get attention from this girl, he took his penis out at a party, a Super Bowl party. It doesn't even sound like a real story. And the craziest part about these stories to me is that he had done stuff like this so often that he had almost normalized it. That people had come to accept this as like Toby behavior. What are you gonna do, man? That's Toby. Boys will be boys, ladies and gentlemen. So all these people were coming out, and it was turning out everyone and their mom had like 7 different bad Toby Turner stories. And the only thing that none of them could really confirm, or none of them felt comfortable trying to confirm without evidence, was that Toby Turner had actually sexually assaulted the woman in the original Tumblr post. But like, I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm trying to say here, but at some point, does it even fucking matter? First of all, are you really expecting me to believe that out of the 90% of her story, which has absolutely been proven to be true, that the 10% that is the worst is just something she made up? And even if you do want me to believe that, that doesn't remove the fact that the 90% of her post that is true is really fucked up. So right after all this breaks out, Toby comes out of the woodworks. He makes a video where he says, "Hey guys, my ex-girlfriend, a girl I used to date, made some accusations against me on Tumblr. Absolutely none of it is true. Everything we did was consensual."
A person I dated a few years ago has just made some extremely serious, false accusations about me. I read her Tumblr post. I've never done anything without her consent. I've never tried to trick her into anything.
And I can kind of get why someone would have looked at this situation in the past and just not have been able to decide who was telling the truth and who was lying. It's a he said, she said situation, and in he said, she said situations, the men are believed and the women are harassed. I get it. It sucks, but I get it. But the thing is, I find it really hard to trust Toby's testimony looking back, and I'll tell you exactly why. You know how in true crime documentaries, the investigators always know if someone is lying because as their motivations to lie evolve, their stories change. If you tell me one story at hour 1 and a different story at hour 5, and these two stories do not go together, I'm going to believe both stories are lies. Well, several years after these allegations had come out, and truly after he had essentially lost everything, Toby released a second rebuttal titled #MeTooLate. In it, he doesn't just change one factoid or one nugget of the narrative, he essentially starts from scratch and writes an entirely new defense. In this video, he states that not only did he not assault this woman, they never even dated. They never slept together or were physical in any way because she was just an obsessed, crazy fan and he didn't share her feelings, and that's why she went nuts and she made that Tumblr post, which was all lies. Now, just a minute ago, I played you a clip of him saying,
"A person I dated a few years ago has just made some accusations about me."
So when you're watching this second collage of clips, I want you to keep that sort of subconsciously playing somewhere in the back of your mind.
The Me Too movement is important because it gave women the confidence to speak out and use their voice. It's important for men to be able to do the same. A few years ago, a friend of mine came to my house at night after partying and she asked to stay the night. She said she was uncomfortable sleeping by herself and she asked that she sleep in the bed with me. I said, okay. And then she asked me to cuddle her and we cuddled and nothing else happened. We were friends for years after this night. The only problem I was aware of that she was upset with was that I didn't want to be in a relationship. A few years later, we went to Disneyland where she told me that she loved me more than anyone in the world and she'd never love anybody more. And I told her we could continue to be friends, but nothing more than that was ever gonna happen. I would appreciate it if she just wouldn't say stuff like that because it made me uncomfortable. And then she said that I had the wrong idea and that she had a boyfriend at the time. Also that he was accused of rape by a Tumblr post, or by a woman who made a Tumblr post about her boyfriend. A few months after this, she made her own Tumblr post about me. Give me my f***ing show back and my book deal for young adults. Stupid lying bitch.
So there is a lot to break down here. So in this video, Toby says that he had a bunch of friends who told him not to make this video, and furthermore, I've heard other people conject that he had a PR team that told him that this video was a bad idea. But I can just not put aside in my mind how blatantly contradictory Tobuscus's two responses to this situation are. If you're expecting me to believe that the story that he spins in the second video is the one where he's telling the absolute truth, then why in God's green earth did he make the first video? Or to put it another way, if this is all true, why did it take so long to come out? If you were accused of something like this by a woman who you had never dated and you had never been physical with really in any way, why would you then immediately make a video where you say that the two of you had dated and that everything you had done was consensual?
A person I dated a few years ago. I read her Tumblr post. The only problem I was aware of that she was upset with was that I didn't want to be in a relationship. And I told her we could continue to be friends, but nothing more than that was ever going to happen. A few months after this, she made her own Tumblr post about me. I've never done anything without her consent. I've never tried to trick her into anything. I said, okay. And then she asked me to cuddle her, and we cuddled, and nothing else happened. We were friends for years after this night.
I know there's this wild conspiracy theory in Tobuscus's fan base that the first video was essentially orchestrated by this mysterious PR group that works with Tobuscus, and that everything he says, he said under instructions by them. But that doesn't make any fucking sense, because the first video is way worse than the second video in terms of portraying him as innocent. So you're suggesting that they told him to lie to make himself seem more potentially guilty? That would be like if I was accused of robbing a bank, and I knew for a fact that I was out of the country that week, but my lawyer turned to me and he went like, hey, you should actually lie and say that you were in the bank wearing a ski mask, but that you still didn't do it. So here's my true belief about what this video actually is. And disclaimer, you might not agree with me here, but this is how I feel. Toby Turner exists in two main ways. First of all, there's a character, a man I like to call Happy Wheels Tobuscus. Happy Wheels Tobuscus is innocent and loves fun and is good for children and families and is ready to do a sponsorship. Then there's the real Toby Turner. Toby Turner is addicted to hard drugs. He's an extraordinarily manipulative person. He's a womanizer. He cheats on every woman he knows. He's basically impossible to work with and extraordinarily inappropriate in person. And he's a person who performs as Happy Wheel Tobuscus in order to gain marketability and a massive audience. When he made that first video, his only problem was that people believed he had done these things which were illegal and wrong, and so he wanted to dispute those things. But by the time that second video had come around, his problems were a little bit different. He had lost a lot of his audience, not because of those specific allegations, because most of his audience just didn't believe that he had done that by default. But the issue was that it had resulted in all of these stories coming out about him, which everyone believed. And because of that, this puppet show he had been putting on for so many years, it was shattered. And people stopped believing in Tobuscus. So this video isn't even necessarily about any of the specific horrible allegations against him. Instead, it's more of a character assassination which seeks to destabilize the very nature of people not believing in Happy Wheels Tobuscus. He's trying to get people to believe in his old persona, which is like trying to convince a 15-year-old atheist that Santa Claus exists. But it's what he's trying to do. And so it becomes more convenient for him to personify the woman who had accused him of these things as an unstable bitch, someone who never tells the truth about anything, and lied about every single aspect of her entire story. And again, what stands out to me the most about how he tells this second version of events is that the main character sounds not like the real Toby Turner, but Happy Wheels Tobuscus, the online persona that everyone but Toby will tell you is a lie. And what's pissed me off so much about this situation is so many people have tried to use it as an example to argue that the Me Too movement is actually bad, because it's gone too far, ladies and gentlemen. They got the Nugget in a Biscuit guy. For instance, Onision, a current commentary YouTuber and future inmate, made this big video throwing himself behind Toby and implying to his audience that arguing that 60% of sexual abuse claims are lies is a totally rational thing to do.
Toby's PR team told Toby not to react. They told him not to make this video, which got 23,000 likes and only 347 dislikes, aka the community loves and supports him for responding. It would be great if the people who came out with accusations had evidence, because I have a question for you. What % of people lie? All right, you know, apparently 60% of people lie during a 10-minute conversation. The average person told 2 or 3 lies in that 10 minutes. People lie all the time on social media, including YouTube.
Oh wow, I wonder if Onision has any ulterior motives to making his audience believe something that stupid. Let me ask you guys a very serious question. What do you think a person gains when they make a claim of abuse? The answer, for those who couldn't figure it out, is that they gain nothing and they lose everything. Name me a Cosby accuser off the top of your head. Most of you can't, and those of you who can probably can because you've heard this exercise before. You don't become famous from being assaulted. You don't get rich off of the experience. All that happens is you lose close friends and family who don't believe you. You enrage a horde of thousands, if not millions of men online who choose to make it their personal goal to make you fear them. There is no motivation to make a false claim because the only motivation to make a real one is to tell the truth despite the fact that it's probably going to ruin your life. When it comes to allegations like these, the ones that turn out to be fraudulent are few and far between. And I didn't really realize this for a while because, for the longest time, my main source of news was Reddit. And on Reddit, for the longest time, you would see false claims brought up a whole lot more than the many, many more which turned out to be true. And I think this can be a sign to the fact that being accused of a crime like this when you're innocent is a big anxiety in a lot of straight men. And the horrifying revelation is that while men fear being accused of rape and thus identify with the accused, women fear being raped and not being believed. And you can take a random guess as to which fear is more realistic. Let's say that you don't believe the more serious allegations from the original Tumblr post. And let's say that you believe this woman is just a lying harpy, so you don't believe any of the post. And let's even go a little bit more unrealistic and say that you don't believe any of these other stories that are getting told about other horrible things he's done to people. Let's pretend that Tobuscus is totally 100% innocent of everything, that he's nothing more than a mischaracterized gamer, and that he's the greatest innocent personality to ever lose his career because of an allegation like this. The question you have to ask is, have we really lost that much? Let's put on a more recent video of his that we all missed out on because of all of this.
Toby. 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 Toby.
What, dude? I'm working.
I want to let you know that I'm going to need to start eating human food. I identify as a human being.
What? Where are you going with this?
Toby, there's no biological difference between me and you. It's a social construct.
Nobody thinks that, anywhere.
Guess what I'm doing next week, Toby? I'm having the surgery.
Yeah, you know what? I think we're good. When did Ricky Gervais start ghostwriting for Tobuscus? Hold on a minute. Are you telling me Tobuscus made a Nugget in a Biscuit too?
The only thing greater than a nugget in a biscuit. 2 nuggets and 2 biscuits.
Chicken nuggets, biscuits, nuggets into biscuits. Nuggets, biscuits, nuggets into biscuits. Nuggets, biscuits, nuggets into biscuits. Dip them both in mashed potatoes. Nuggets, biscuits, nuggets into biscuits. Nuggets, biscuits, nuggets into biscuits.
This is the same song! This is so bad. Nothing about this recipe makes any sense. And I don't know why I expected it to. Part of me just really thought this... Part of me was really hoping this was going to turn out to be surprisingly good. And I keep burning myself. It's the pumpkin spice spam all over again. I keep becoming invested in bad food being good, and then it's just bad, and it makes me sad. What am I doing? Do I not listen to my own videos? Jesus, I'm dumb. Oh, God. So that's not real caviar? It's like vegan caviar I bought on Amazon. It tastes putrid. Oh. But I do really like these nuggets. This is actually good. Now that it's like a little hors d'oeuvre, I guess. The moment of truth, I would say, is yeah, I really like this now. That's a real surprise. If you guys want to do this, I recommend it. I was later informed I had invented something called the Chicken Mini.